5. This is a subcommittee meeting for the State Workforce Development Board focused on Goal 1, which we will go through more thoroughly here in a moment. For those that are on, I did pop the agenda into the chat as well as the links to kind of the primary document that might be most helpful as we talk to follow along with, but I have a few other things here if I need to share my screen. In terms of what we're going to do for the next hour or so, and hopefully we can be again as a small group, like I was saying, maybe we'll get really into it and chatting, or we'll be a little bit more efficient with our time here. Pull up the agenda myself, is to go through kind of the expectations, the charge of our group, do some just introductions to each other. I know all of you a little bit, but I think it would be helpful to go through again just who are you, what's your background, and why were you interested in being on this subcommittee, or how did you land here? If you got told you were going to be here, that's okay too, by either Drake or Sabina. And then we'll just get into, I think, the real kind of meat and potatoes of the conversation in terms of, at least initially, what do we see our work plan looking like? What additional information do we need? What does success look like, and who else should we eventually over time bring to the table with us as appropriate? Then define any next steps and wrap up. So that's how I hope to use the next hour. Before we jump in, is there anything that any of you wanted to make sure we carve out some time to cover so that I can manage the time appropriately?
I think the agenda can be flexible enough to cover everything.
I think so too. All right, so why don't we just do a round of introductions to get us going? I'll start and then I'll just call names in no particular order. That way we're, efficient and moving along. So my name's Kendall Smith. I'm the commissioner here at the Department of Labor. Like I said, I've met all of you at least at a high level over the past year or so. Prior to being here, I was in the governor's office for the past 9 years as his policy director, and I had all things early care and learning, pre-K up through higher education and training in my portfolio. So really leaned into workforce and education and where that overlap is. So this is an area at the Department of Labor I'm happy to continue to be able to work on in my new role. I am here at this committee because sector strategies, prioritizing sectors, data, targets are things that the Department of Labor already does on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. We have the Labor Market Information Division. We can go through some of the data in a second in terms of what the committee had already discussed as terms of our priority sectors and targets and why. We have a workforce development division where we do a lot of different types of workforce support, from all things registered apprenticeship to adult CTE center grants, to doing job fairs, to being involved on multiple committees. We have 11 regional job centers where we serve any job seeker that wants to walk in and says, help me with my resume, help me find a job, help me interview, help me find training. So this seemed to be a good fit just in terms of the resources that I could bring from the department to bear on our conversation. All right, how about Jim?
Thanks. Excuse me. I am on the board as a elected municipal official and vice chair of the select board in the town of Bennington, and I'm retired, so I'm not participating in our workforce. But I am retired from a career spent mostly with the Bennington County Regional Commission, which is the Regional Planning Commission for Bennington County. But during my time as executive director over the last 12 years, we essentially took on the Regional Development Corporation role as well. So we were kind of the planning and development agency for our region, kind of like the NVDA is for the Northeast Kingdom. And so we spent, did do quite a bit of work around workforce issues with on both sides, the planning and development side, particularly working on a lot of career weeks and things like that with the high school students and the technical center students, and a lot of outreach with some of the other groups like the South Shire Young Professionals, and I'm trying to support a growing workforce, which is a big problem in our region because, amongst other things, we have a shrinking workforce. It's just not a problem. So
Mhm. Thank you. And I know the municipalities struggle for staff themselves in capacity to
yeah,
continue to do all the things.
it's a real challenge. You know, especially some of the technical positions. You know, with the water treatment facility and the wastewater plant, things like that. The police department is another one that's a huge issue for us, and it's especially difficult not just for us as a municipality, but for a lot of the employers, especially the schools, the hospital, everybody in our region, because we compete or try to with folks in municipalities and hospitals and schools in New York State and Massachusetts. And very often they are kind of like at a different level of compensation than we are in Vermont. So it is especially challenging here.
Okay, Jeremy.
Good afternoon. I'm Jeremy White. I'm currently the work-based learning, formerly known as co-op learning, coordinator at Riverbend Career and Tech Center in Bradford. 20-year educator. This is my 12th year, I guess, on the CTE side of education. I've served as a tech center director at Linden Institute. Before I came kind of back closer to the students for the last few years at Riverbend. My motivation, I think of it as obvious, but the idea of building those pathways into careers and things like that, is something that I'm passionate about beginning in the secondary level. So, so students can kind of see where their trajectory is going. I'm uniquely positioned, I guess, right on the Connecticut River, right? So I do jump back and forth, trying to maintain that balance between Vermont and New Hampshire. I don't know if that's a really hard line on the Connecticut River in terms of our work, or my focus, is on Vermont students. So sometimes the employment is on the other side of the river in this particular region. So a lot of self-employment in this area. So working that aspect, especially around the trades. The other interesting piece, I did see that, IT and cybersecurity was part of our goal. And I do believe that as a tech center, we have the only cybersecurity program in the regional tech centers. That really honestly needs enrollment, but we did just place our first student in an IT job with their credentials that they earned. So bridging that gap, I think, from secondary to post-secondary, and really trying to keep kids here and knowing what the opportunities are available in the state.
Congratulations on that placement. I saw Jerry did a little clap too. That's
Yep.
awesome.
It's a hard one to place in. So yeah, that was happy.
Do you know, have you all finished? You had some of the mobile homes that were flooded that two of them, I think, that students were remediating. Are you guys still working on that, or are they finished?
We I wish we were finished. We are a half-day center here, which means we only have our kids for 2.5 hours a day. So work tends to be sporadic and a little bit slow when you combine it with everything else we need to do. So it is a work in progress. There's a new roof, there's new siding.
Great.
I actually have some students that will be doing plumbing and electrical. So we're moving along.
Nice. Just curious. I know you had two of those, and I just
Yep.
I went out to see them a couple times out there when they were getting delivered and throughout. Wasn't sure if you were done yet or if they were still being worked on or just, but that's awesome that they're still doing the electrical and learning that skill in there and plumbing. All right, Jerry.
Thanks for having me here today. I'm actually filling in for Becky Capsalis, if any of you know her. She's our AVP of Talent Acquisition. She couldn't come today, but sent this information on my way, and it's a passion of mine to really see how we can affect the workforce and, how do we attract and also keep the workforce here in Vermont. But I'm the System Director of Workforce Development for UVM Health. I've been here about 4 years now. I lead the creation and implementation of all of our pathway and apprenticeship programs across Vermont and Northern New York. I'm up to a team of 3 now, and growing in how much we offer, and and our team as well. So it's very exciting in numerous areas. I'm not on a board like I mentioned in Vermont, but I am on the apprenticeship advisory board through Vermont, and I've been on other workforce development boards across the country as well. I'm actually from Wisconsin. I actually live here, work remotely for the system, but I'm there frequently and have a team in the area, and really excited to be here and seeing how I can help out. And I will say, as a background, I am a carpenter by trade. I went through an apprenticeship program, very passionate about work-based learning and helping steer youth and adults into programs if college isn't their immediate answer right after high school. And somehow I found myself getting back to school and going back to college and finding my way into workforce development now, where I can pretty much apply all of that to what we do now.
Mhm. Do you still do any carpentry?
Yeah, don't say that too loud. My wife might hear you. She does put me to work around the house, and
Yep.
she's always envisioning, where do we put board and batten up? Where do we put shiplap up? And I do a little bit, and it's fun.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I always like
Yeah.
hearing about kind of midlife career changes with folks. One of the more drastic ones I've ever come across is somebody who was an art history teacher, decided that she wanted better benefits and became
Yeah.
a state trooper.
That's
she's a state-
incredible.
Yeah, went from being an art history college professor to state trooper. So it's
Yeah.
inspiring.
Honestly, like asking 17-year-olds or 18-year-olds what they're going to do for the rest of their life, that's a big decision. And I don't know what the statistics are, but many end up going through 2 career changes before they find out what they actually want to do in their, 20s and 30s.
Yep. Yeah. All right. What I'm going to do here momentarily is I'm going to put the goal on the screen so we can start picking it apart and discuss where we want to go. Sorry, just find screen. Do you guys see the goal by any chance? Or I'm sorry, do you see the goal
Yep.
now? What am I sharing?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Too many
Yeah, we can see it.
screens going here
I
between
see
like tabs and then
goals,
actual
yes.
screens. All right, so goal number 1, again, increase the supply of workers, develop recruiting targets for the workforce in Vermont's 5 sectors with the greatest workforce need, and develop sector-specific strategies to increase the supply of workers in collaboration with employers, agency of commerce, and other stakeholders. So when I read that, and again, let's all make sure we're on the same page of how we understand that, how I understand this goal, and then this subcommittee's charge, which we would eventually feed up to the board for their input and approval, would be what are the 5 sectors as kind of layer 1. We did discuss that as a board in November, and the 5 sectors that the board, I think, voted on or seemed to be in general consensus overall were construction and trades, IT and cybersecurity, manufacturing, healthcare, and then leisure and hospitality. And I have another document that we'll go to in a second on that. So I kind of saw that as like layer 1, layer 2, what is the need? What is the workforce gap in those sectors? And then layer 3, what are some recommendations, strategies, actions that we want to put forward that we think would help close that workforce gap? So let me pause. Is that how you all read and understand this, or does somebody want to throw out a different
No,
interpretation?
I think that's as I understand it, and I think it's good. And I agree with it, and I certainly agree that those 5 sectors are critically important and in need of workforce development. I had a couple of comments.
Mhm.
One was there's an industry sector that didn't appear in any of the charts that I think is really critical to the future of the state. even though it might be a little bit under the radar, and it really, really is in need of workforce development, and that's agriculture and food services. And I don't know if that can like be worked into some of these. I mean, there's a little bit of overlap, but so much of the character of our state relies on the working landscape and maintaining our agricultural economy. And we're just seeing, farms and farmland go away. And and I've seen tech programs in agriculture come and go in our area, and it kind of concerns me. So I didn't say that as saying we should, throw in another sector in there, but I hope that we can somehow consider that when we're working on strategies that might affect that sector as well.
Over time, where I've seen this sometimes be successful and sometimes fall down when this board in particular chooses priority sectors is sectors get offended if they're not on the list. So I've seen it again. That hasn't happened yet aggressively this time, but previously under different iterations of this board, when they've tried to do this exercise, in the past, you've had different chambers of commerce, different trades associations in the room, all advocating that they want to be a priority sector too. And so I am wondering aloud, Jim, and then Jeremy and Jerry, feel free to weigh in. Are you really focused specifically on like agriculture and forestry in terms of actual kind of farming and forestry work, or when you say food services, are you thinking a little bit more broadly to include things like agritourism or things that again are kind of where the tourism economy links into agriculture in terms of value-added products that are sold, right? Or maple sugaring industry.
Yeah, I mean,
what are you
definitely
broad or
that.
narrow?
Yeah, and agritourism is picked up in the leisure and hospitality discussion. I did see that. But yeah, like we did a lot of work in food systems when I was with the regional commission, and it's kind of the full spectrum from the producers, to the specialty products and the value added products and the retail and the distribution. I mean, the whole system is pretty complicated, pretty interwoven, and I think it's not just the tourism and the look of the state, but it's actually I think a really critical future need that an opportunity that we're going to need to provide more of our food and more products, that are locally grown, including those from the forest. So I think in places it fits under, manufacturing, in places it fits under trades, in places it fits under leisure and hospitality. I just think I didn't want to. It seemed like a glaring omission given the importance to the state and the problems that we're having in that area.
One thing I will mark for myself for follow-up and I can circulate is within recent past, whether it's 1, 2, 3, or 4 years ago, the Agency of Agriculture and the Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund might have this as well. We're charged with putting together a strategic plan for agriculture and forestry. I just don't remember what is in it. I did read it once upon a time. But I can locate whether there's one on Agency of Ag's website or get it from the secretary, as well as maybe reach out to the Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund and see what they have, because that links into another part of our conversation that where I want to, again, depending on how you all feel, if some of this work has been done and we think we are largely okay with it, adopt the work that's been done and not reinvent the wheel and create yet another competing strategy or plan where then everyone still doesn't know which plan we're following, right? Because there's 5 of them. So look, we can put a pin in that and come back to it, but that was one of the things I wanted to raise for discussion. But I will look and see what the Agency of Ag or Sustainable Jobs Fund has, Jim, and circulate it if they've already done something in this space.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I think that's a great idea, because when I first got on the board, I read over the past strategic plan, I guess, and I was like, well, there's a lot of things in there, and not all of them have been done. And so certainly, we need to focus on the things that a lot of good thinking went into and find ways to move it forward.
Right.
It would, in this, and I don't mean to dominate, but, when I think about, growing the workforce, right? That's what it's about. It's like, there's two things going on there. I think it's obvious, right? One is providing, workforce development opportunities for, people who are here, whether they be, high school, college students or adult learners that, wanting to develop some skill sets that are needed by these local industries. And the other is, frankly, in our area, and I think in a lot of areas of the state, it's just a problem of raw numbers. There aren't the people to develop to get those skills to take on the jobs. We need to recruit people to the state before we can start worrying about training them. So it seemed like there's two things going on there, and I wasn't sure if our charge was in both of those areas or not.
So that's a great question. I do want to just acknowledge that Drake has joined. So Drake, feel free to chime in whenever you are able or interested in adding to the conversation. But Jim, to your point, when I look at all 4 of these goals that are on the screen, I feel like there's going to be at some point where these lanes have to merge and they have to work together. So to your point, like number 4, increase post-secondary graduate retention, that group of people, right, could be part of our strategy in terms of how are we increasing the supply of workers in these 5 sectors. So I do see a time where with Drake and Sabina's help, we're going to have some kind of interplay between what's going on in these 4 goals to make sure we're not all either duplicating effort or making sure they all fit together. Because I do think the things in numbers 2, 3, and 4, or like you said, number 2, re-engaging Vermonters that are already here in the workforce is also going to be part of our strategy and solution in terms of where are we getting these people from to close these workforce gaps. Jerry or Jeremy, do you guys have any initial thoughts that you want to flag now?
I don't have any immediate thoughts. I'm just, as a newer member of this, or as a newer kind of person sitting in today, I just kind of more listening right now, and I'll have some thoughts soon, but it's just nice to get to know kind of the framework of this.
Yes.
I think my initial thoughts are really around like knowing what already exists in terms of pathways for training.
Mhm.
And making sure that those are well, I guess, publicized or marketed.
Mhm.
At least from my standpoint, and for people to want to come here, they need to know what's available and how they're going to progress through whatever industry it is they're coming for. Yeah, I mean, that's my mode there, that those pathways to me and making them clear and what's available in terms of even just our kids. Like maybe
Yeah.
they don't need to go to Florida to figure it out. They can stay here in Vermont and have a pathway that is well designed and outlined for them.
Agreed. And I know there's like a little bit of that, but to your point, it's not consistent. It's in fits and starts. It's not statewide. So we should do a better job of, again, figuring out I'm sorry, I know I'm being a little bit choppy right now, but one of my pet peeves, right, is we're such a small state and we don't do anything at scale. Sorry, it's my personal opinion, is right, we still all have these disparate regional efforts that are going on. And that's good. We want communities involved. We want that energy. We want things to be realistic and local. But at the same time, sometimes it's like we just have to choose this is the thing that we're all going to buy into so we can do that clarity and do that kind of this is the pathway, this is what it looks like, and all the students are getting that same information. So if this is the healthcare pathway or this is the carpentry pathway, right? And it's well defined. Anyway, sorry, I could monologue about that for a long time and I will stop.
I'll justify your thoughts there. That has crossed our, we've conversed about that a lot in the last couple of years. So if it makes you feel any better, I'll justify everything you just said and share the same thoughts.
Thanks. All right, so if the first layer was 5 sectors, so we went through those, and then Jim, I noted, and I'll make sure it's reflected in the minutes, and I'll follow up agricultural and food services, and how does that fit in? The second kind of strain of thought in this goal was, what are the targets, recruiting targets for these sectors? So if we accept, for purposes of this conversation, that the next task, that should actually, if we can come to consensus on what data set we're using, actually could be fairly easy. And we could almost say it's done, or a first draft is done. I'm going to change no, I'm not going to change the screen. Sorry, I'm going to scroll down. So just for an example, and there's lots of different ways you can pull this data. I mentioned we have a labor market information division. If any of you have ever heard Matt Barowitz speak, he's the head of it. And so when I was coming up with a proposal to bring to the board to jumpstart conversation about what are the most in-demand sectors, I had our labor market information division rather pull some of the data around where are the biggest workforce gaps, where are the biggest needs, and do some of those projections. So construction and trades, this is from November. We might want to refresh this. They projected that they have 1,600 openings a year until 2032. And that does not include, Jeremy, to your point, the self-employed populations, independent contractors, for example, in this sector. That's through construction companies that are defining people as employee and what their openings are. Not counting for subs, not counting for, again, for the independent contractor crowd. In manufacturing, that sector is projected to have 3,000 openings until 2032. I know I'm moving fast. This is also linked in the email and in the chat if anyone wants to read this more slowly at your leisure. Healthcare and social services. So again, Jerry, for you that are probably looking at this with an eagle eye, this does include the social services make code as well when they pulled this. But that sector is, those two sectors rather, those two together, projected to have 6,600 openings. That's a year until 2032. And then in the IT and tech space, the way it's coded in Bureau of Labor Statistics and National Data as professional and business services, has, where to go, 1,900 openings until 2032. That similarly does not include self-employed opportunities, where again, you can easily be an independent contractor with cybersecurity and IT. Then leisure and hospitality, 7,000 openings until 2032. So this was in November. I could ask our division to dust off those projections and say, because we do get new information from the federal government on a regular basis to see if those are still accurate or if they need just a little true up, given it's been a few months with how the data has shifted. But we, in theory, again, we could really trust but verify and tweak this, say, those are the gaps, those are the targets. Again, there are other data sets out there. So I just want to be like, just recognize that right up front. And the other question I had coming into this for us to potentially discuss is, these are sector projections. They're not necessarily occupation projections, where when I just say healthcare, there are lots and lots of jobs you can be in healthcare. Like, are we talking nurses? Are we talking scrub techs? Are we talking podiatrist? Are we talking patient services and check-in? Like, you know, that's a huge sector. Same thing, construction. Are we talking electricians? Are we talking plumbers? Are we talking carpenters? So I don't have necessarily an answer or a motion to put on the table. And the goal does just say sectors, but there might be different strategies that we want to propose for the different jobs within these sectors, right? Like, I don't know, but recruiting an electrician may not be the same as recruiting a plumber or a carpenter or a welder, in terms of maybe some more specific actions one would take. So I'll stop talking there, but that would be what I have to show you on, to get the conversation started on numbers. The only other thing is, we do at the Department of Labor with the McClure Foundation, what's called the Most Promising Job Brochure. Do you see a new screen? Okay, so I know this is kind of small, but every 2 years we put out something that looks like this, and this is actually by occupation. And it projects out the 10-year projected job opening, the number, how much education you need, and then the median and hourly and yearly wage. And so, so this would be a different way that we can pull data, depending how specific we wanted to get by occupation versus sector. Oh, yes, Jeremy, yes, you have it on your desk, right in front of you. Exciting. All right. I'll stop talking if anyone has any immediate reactions to anything I just shared about numbers.
A lot of carpenters.
Yeah. We have a lot of housing needs too.
Yep,
Like,
absolutely.
so infrastructure needs, aging infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, I have some of the job specific stuff I had scribbled down. One thing was in the construction and trades piece. There was in the paragraph breakdown, there was some stuff on climate resiliency goals. Yeah, and that was interesting because that focused on resiliency, flood recovery type things. But I mean, in the general area of, energy and climate, there's a huge need for weatherization workers, and and related to the trade specifically, that relate to renewable energy development and energy conservation, electricians and HVAC workers. I mean, those are, I think, important now and more important even in the future. So.
Yes. Agreed. The what you're referencing there, so when I was trying to put this all together, it's a lot of words, I know that, but for the board, I was, in terms of justifying why these 5 sectors, was pulling the actual data, but then layering a little bit of art or policy then as the next kind of level of consideration of what are the widely accepted goals that we have for the state and the policy priorities. And so construction and trades, like the data was there, and the policy in terms of at least the executive branch and legislative branch having a big focus on things like housing, infrastructure, and climate resiliency, and this being the sector that we're going to need to support to achieve those policy objectives in that way. So that's why, just as a refresher from like why this information, why is it laid out like this? That was my structure and my lens.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's funny the way they overlap too, because the housing goal there. When I first read that, I think I was thinking, well, we need construction workers to build the housing, but then I was also thinking, and my next thought was, well, we need the housing because we can't get any of those workers to move to our area because there's no housing. So we need construction workers to build the housing, and we need the housing for all the workers and all the other sectors that we need.
Yep. Right.
Yeah, sorry I'm late. I had a little work
Hey, Chris.
emergency. It's Chris Loso. It's funny, I was on the plane last week with someone from Mac Molding. And she actually telecommutes, and she comes up to Mac Molding. She lives in South Carolina in Greenville, and she's not able to find something there. So one of the themes that comes in my head is build where they work, right? So big challenge.
Hi, Chris. Welcome.
Has any thought been giving in for so I mean, you need the infrastructure to attract workers. It's almost like like you were just describing, a vicious circle. You need one without the other. Some states are incentivizing employers to specifically recruit remote workforces from their states in areas where you can. IT, I think, could be a big one. There's a lot of individuals, even like myself, that are remote that can do jobs that actually can't physically move there. there are
Mhm.
incentives that states are starting to offer to not only if you go into their state to hire, they're giving you credits, but states actually encouraging their workforce or their employers to help add to the workforce by recruiting and encouraging remote workers in some key areas. So just a thought.
Vermont did have a $10,000 remote work relocation incentive for people. So if you could move here and work remotely, we were offering $10,000 to help
Nice.
cover your relocation cost. That got fully expended. It went like that. People did move here, but the legislature, it was kind of controversial and they ended it because we were getting a lot of calls into the governor's office at the time for Vermonters that were like, where's I've been here and I work here. Where's my $10,000?
Yep.
Like I would like $10,000, please. I'm already here. So there, it was in place for maybe 2 or 3 years, but then it ended up during one of the budget cycles not getting replenished.
That makes sense.
But it does, Jerry, make me wonder, and I'm sorry for joining late. I had to get my
Okay.
pupils dilated. But I wonder if there's some sort of like middle way in that, where I know there are a lot of folks who would relocate to Vermont for a job, but what keeps them from doing that is lack of housing. I wonder if there's a way to have some sort of like short-term remote incentive, and while we're getting housing stock increased, that like could support folks in that, to ease that transition, to get a role in Vermont and do it remotely while they sort of wait to be able to access housing that's here. So it's not like because I agree, Kendall, that stuff does tend to be pretty controversial, but there are, there's a population of folks who would like to be here and like to work here, but they can't physically land here yet.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all for it. I really supported that, just for the record, that policy. So we could, I'm noting it, like things for future conversation to have on the table. I'm just being mindful of time and that we have 15 minutes left. I'm gonna just keep us moving just a little bit. So then the third kind of piece of the goal, again, was then what are basically the policy recommendations or the strategies that we would want to put forward to hit these recruitment targets in each sector. And so that's where, going back to a previous comment and something we talked about, if there's already ideas out there that we think are good, that we can just adopt, and then we don't have to regurgitate them or create our own, I would personally love to see us do that. I'm open to other feedback there. So it's, again, or things that we can work with. So these, I do think would need a little dusting off, but from the last strategic plan, sorry, this is a good one. This isn't what I was going to put up, but this is the healthcare workforce strategic plan that the healthcare workforce subcommittee specifically put together with AHS, and they had a section of this, just for example, that I pulled up just in terms of inventorying what exists, to develop and scale industry-driven pipelines, pathways, and training programs that address current and future demands in rurality. I have on a different screen. I'm not going to make you guys dizzy by starting and stopping screen share, but there is what's called Vermont Talent Pipeline Management Group that's also focused on healthcare. They recently had a summit. They recently came out with recommendations. And then I had sent along in the email what was in the previous strategic plan for manufacturing and for hospitality and retail. So a little different than what we've defined with hospitality and leisure, but there are things that we can create a work plan for reviewing and saying, do we want to just adopt, again, some of the things that exist or freshen them up versus starting from ground zero. The gap I saw coming into this, where something either doesn't exist or I haven't found it yet, and maybe it does, was on IT and cyber. There is the Vermont Technology Information Alliance, VTIA. And just to be honest, I just haven't had the time to go hunt around and see if they have something in this sector or this space to potentially work from or pull. But that was the one that I thought might take, as I just look back at these, the most kind of actual creation compared to some of these others where we could be pulling from either existing trade association work, previous board work, other groups' work. So we're not creating again a competing document. Does anyone object to that strategy, or do you guys think that sounds reasonable?
No, I mean, I think I mean, like I said, there's a lot of stuff out there, and there's a lot of stuff that I've never seen, and I'm not familiar with. It's not really my main things. They're working with this stuff all the time. It would be really helpful, I think, for me anyway, to say, okay, if we went through each one of these 5 critical sectors and kind of had a summary of what are the, the ideas that have been presented or developed in the past, and then we could maybe say, okay, this one has been implemented, or this one isn't working out, and could it, or this is something that we need to add to the mix. I mean, if we started from that, I think rather than starting from scratch, it makes a lot of sense.
I will connect with Drake and see how we can put together. That's a really good idea for a next step. These summaries for each. That way we are not as a group or individually having to wade through on our own all these different documents. And if we can come to the subcommittee and say, here's the summary of who's done a strategic plan and what's in it. And with some maybe recommendations of what we adopt or change, or where we need to fill a gap, that might be a good way an efficient way to keep the conversation moving for us as a group. So I'm going to note that.
Yeah, I think if we talked about them that way through each of these sectors, I have no doubt, and I'm sure that you see it, that common themes and ideas emerge from each one. Like, we should be doing more to support, this is a barrier in construction and trades, and this is also a barrier in manufacturing. And so what can we do to remove that barrier in both of those places,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jim, I like the idea of like summaries, because I think all these documents are going to look different, right? They've been developed by different people. Each sector has things that are unique. But I think it could be helpful to work on some sort of a higher level document that the board can use, and that we can start to communicate with external partners. Because I do think at least from my perspective, I think this strategy of identifying priority sectors is going to be really useful for the board in how you communicate your work. And it really ties into other committees, like Jeremy, your comment about investigating what pathways exist and how we better market them. Like, that is one of the goals in a lot of ways. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for the work of committees to benefit from the work of other committees, or be, working in parallel. So I think it will just be really helpful to have this anchor and framing of what are the key sectors that may change and evolve too. But Kendall and I can definitely work on summarizing, and perhaps if folks are interested, like, we could have Susie Tremblay come and talk about the work of the Healthcare Workforce Strategic Planning Committee, because that's been done over a number of months, and we have board members who've participated in that work. So there could be some good like best practices or recommendations in how this committee could fill in work for other sectors that have less to draw from.
Well, and to add to your point, Drake, it may be, depending on how that comes together, to have them speak to the healthcare, like with the strategic planning they're doing there, is invite some reps from the other industries or the other sectors that we are prioritizing, to have them listen in, because that might help inform them also communicating with us what their needs would be, or how they would want to put that together for their specific sectors. Because I'm assuming that the goal would be is also to get those subject matter experts. Like, I'm thinking like construction and trades, like someone from the Vermont Construction Academy to be involved, or like in manufacturing, Mac Molding or something, a couple of those individuals to help kind of, help move that forward in each of those sectors.
Drake, one of the questions I had coming into this that I was going to follow up with you on, as I'm trying to synthesize everything we're talking about and help come up as chair of the subcommittee with next steps and a work plan is, what is the timeline? Like, what are you and Sabina asking in terms of when we as a subcommittee come to the office or come to the board and say, here it is, do you like it? Or, what feedback, do you want to adopt this? Are we talking, I mean, 3 months? Are we talking 6 months? Are we talking this time next year? In terms of how we pace ourselves, and then how I also be respectful of this group's time from a scheduling perspective.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, to give an annoying answer, it depends on, like the type of work that is being done by each committee is different. The level of previous work to draw from is different, right? Like when it comes to, the committee around supporting adults to reengage and advance in the workforce, there's a ton of work that the previous board did that they want to start from. So I think I don't have a deadline in mind. I don't want to speak for Sabina, but I really do think it's about like, what is the timeline under which work can be done well and comprehensively, and that you all feel comfortable bringing it to the board. So we have the quarterly meetings are kind of those touch points. The next one is in June. If there's a certain product that you all feel could be presented to the full board at that time, great. Otherwise, I would say let's look to the next quarterly meeting. Like, I don't want the timeline to be the thing that's dictating the quality of work. I feel like it needs to be done in a manner where everyone feels really confident in it, and also prepared to engage the rest of the board in those conversations. I think it would be wonderful to have some outputs and some plans to be sharing with, the rest of our sister agencies, with the governor's office. Like, if there are things that are coming out of this committee that you really want to share in the fall with the governor's office that could really inform that work, that would be ideal. But I think the timeline needs to follow like capacity and the work, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yes, that does. What I was thinking too was, it would be helpful if we had most of it done, or framework in terms of next legislative session, so that we're using this as a way to prioritize policy and funding asks. And ideally that would be all framed out by like November, December, ahead of the legislature convening in January.
Well, I'm thinking just from my perspective as a board member who, despite being retired, doesn't have a whole lot of time. If we had, like you said, there's a lot of good work that's been done, and if we had given to us in advance of a next meeting, or at least for some of the sectors, like I said, the summary or synopsis of targets and strategies that have been developed. And I certainly could see myself putting the time into really looking those over and trying to think what ought to be priorities, and looking for relationships between them, and bringing to bear, what I've heard from people in our region about what the real needs are, or what the barriers that they've run into. And if we could have that conversation in the context of kind of an outline, maybe it would help focus where we want to go.
Yep.
Great.
We can do that. So what I'll do is I will work with our labor market information division to go back to, again, that information we pulled in November in terms of targets for the sectors as a sector, and see if those numbers are still the same or if they need to be adjusted. And then we can summarize, to your point, what currently exists out there for plans and strategies, but do it succinctly, and then highlight where there might be gaps.
Well, I wanted to tell you, Kendall, too, you can tell your labor market people, or somebody who worked in planning for 35 years in Vermont, that their database was the most valuable one that I ever used, and it was really, really well organized. So thank them for me for making my job easier.
I will thank them for you. Yes. All right. Is that sound like a logical plan in terms of a next step? And then I can also follow up by email once I have time to actually play with this. And then if there's questions, we can always communicate by email as well. And I'll work with Drake to schedule a next meeting. I'm thinking, maybe beginning of May. See how much I can get done with the team here during the month of next 2 months. It's going to be, even though it sounds easy, it is going to be a lot to round this up across the 5 sectors and get it into a succinct summary in terms
Well,
of.
even,
it's thorough,
honestly,
it
I
exists,
appreciate
but-
that, and I appreciate how your time constraint too. I mean, even if maybe before, before then, if you could pull it together for 2 or 3 of the sectors, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes, we could do it. We could do it that way too versus waiting for all 5. So we'll do a doodle poll, but maybe I'll shoot for mid-April. Does that sound fair? And we'll do a doodle poll in around mid-April. Jeremy, when's April vacation, and is that going to impact your schedule?
Our vacation is the week of April 20th.
Okay, we'll shoot for before then, in case you're
And-
going anywhere warm and tropical.
Well, fortunately, we didn't go to Mexico for February break, so,
Mhm.
on a side note, you admit, yeah, the manufacturing and
Mhm.
leisure and tourism already have
Mhm.
some sort of draft materials. And the
Yeah,
healthcare,
And healthcare.
and healthcare.
and healthcare. Yep, so I guess my only add to that is along the construction and trades.
Mhm.
Um, just knowing what is, like, I know VTC has reached out like into tech centers to
Mhm.
promote electrical and plumbing and
Mhm.
HVAC.
Mhm.
CCV has a program out there where they're connecting with manufacturers. And I'm curious as to how many different in that sector is available. And it might be something we need to push down because there could be so many tentacles to that. Just how do we pull that together into a strategy?
Yep.
Yeah, but I certainly think looking at what's already done is, yeah. I work in education, so we recreate the wheel yearly, and it would be nice not to do that.
Yeah. Chris?
Yeah, to your point, Jeremy, I just had found out one of my clients. I own a commercial cleaning business and a property management business, and Heritage Automotive. I just happened to be. They called me and said, "Hey, listen, I need you to do a cleanup before and after. We're having the automotive challenge on March 19th." So, not only like organizations or schools reaching out to the CTEs, but actual businesses themselves are setting up programs. So I guess they reached out to most of the CTEs in the state. They have I guess they have a written test that all the students take would have an interest in automotive repair, maintenance, and then they have them come in for a day. And the governor went last year to Heritage Automotive and helped give out the awards and so forth. And they actually hired 2 years ago or 3 years ago 4 students from that group, and then 2 kids last year, or it's gonna be 2 years ago, and then last year another 2 people. So individual businesses are doing some cool things too. It might be nice to grab hold of what they're doing and how it works.
And yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. Like,
Yeah,
if everybody knows what everybody else is doing,
exactly.
and of course, I work with under 18 population too, so I run into a lot of barriers in that aspect. But even just Heritage has an awesome flow chart of how you go move your way through the auto tech world with Heritage. I've never seen anybody else do that, despite me asking. Yeah, so it's that sort of initiatives and things that would give us, I think, an opportunity to pull businesses into the work and say, hey, I mean, there's resources there that
Mhm.
I don't even know about.
All right, so be on the lookout for a doodle poll for mid-April. I have some takeaway work, and also be on the lookout for, I guess, updates and traffic in your email inboxes over the next few weeks. And we will go from there. Any other business or parting words of wisdom?
Yeah, thanks for running us
Yeah.
through the meeting, Kendall. This charge for this committee is so complex and broad. It's very very difficult to get your head around it. I think you helped me anyway a little bit.
Okay.
So
Good.
thank you.
Agreed. Thank you.
All right. Well, have a good rest of the week. Enjoy the warm weather today.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.